Welcome, Ravi. And friends, we are discussing the big data. How's the big data issues playing out in India? How's the country and its people and IT sector going to use the big data concepts and its practices? That's what we are going to discuss in Tech Talk today. Ravi, welcome. And let me ask start by asking, how do you define big data? Big data was always available, with the kind of population we have. Everything was big here, every statistics, everything. How has it become, a talking point now with the IT intervention in it?
Okay, let me expand this query to cover not just big data, but because big data is just raw data, but also to cover what you do with that data, which is predictive analytics and the tools used to get intelligence and wisdom and knowledge and insight out of that data, which are artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. So, a well-known scientist had said that research is what I am doing when I don't know what I am doing. And again, in big data, you really don't know what you're doing until you start doing it because you have a whole lot of data, which is unstructured data. And the idea is to find correlations and causes and cause and effect relationships and to find patterns in that data which you can then use for making decisions and monetize that. So let me give an example first of what the problems of big data in India are and how it can be used. For instance, you look at the CGHS scheme, the central government health scheme for employees. Now, this has covered lakhs of employees for decades, and it is present in every single district headquarters or even smaller villages all across the country. Now, for decades, they have been obtaining the health data of government officials, whoever had been to be hospitalized for a problem, whoever had to see a doctor. But the problem is that all these data are on paper and they are in individual files of an individual on paper in different locations, which can be in small villages or in small towns. But it is a huge amount of data which has been collected over years of the health of millions of people. Now, this is data that all the big pharmaceutical companies in the world would like, because if you do a lot of analysis on this data, you will be able to find out um, a lot of information about diseases such as heart attacks, cardiac parameters, cancers, endocrine failures, kidney failures, dialysis. You will be able to predict that in certain regions, people are susceptible to certain types of diseases. In other regions, people may be susceptible to another kind of disease. You will know what are the kinds of parasites that people and infectious diseases that people get.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
will
Ravi,
be able
Ravi,
to.
Ravi, Ravi. Let me cut you short here. So, in short, that big data is aggregation of all this, data which is spread, which is, on the paper into a system where you can analyze it for greater good. Is it, can you define, is it that?
Yes, broadly speaking, your definition is absolutely correct. Let me elaborate on what you have said. The term big data began to be used around 2000 AD when corporations started coming across very complex problems, which the then software packages of the day, the data processing systems, the databases of that day, and the RDBMSs of that day, what are called the relational database management systems, of the day could not cope with, and so you have to turn to parallel processing computing. So big data is data which is characterized by a lot of what are called V terms. First is the volume of the data. The volume of the data is simply humongous. Then there is the variety of the data. Typically in the 1990s, people would enter data in, let us say, corporations or other systems, which was already structured according to certain parameters. But now you're getting a lot of data, let us say, from sensors, the Internet of Things, machine to machine communications. For instance, let us take a Fitbit that you're wearing. And that your Fitbit is sending a lot of medical information about you, which is in an unstructured format, and it is for your doctor to make sense of what that data is. So, big data is characterized by what are called the V's. The first is the volume of data, the variety of the unstructured data, which doesn't fall into neatly predefined parameters,
Yeah.
the velocity of that data, how quickly you need to process that data, the veracity of that data, because you're going to find that the vast amount of that data is simply junk data which need not have to be collected. And what is the value of that data? Again, you most of the data you find, you might end up finding that uh, that data is of no use to
Use.
you
Yeah.
in terms of
Yeah, yeah,
making
yeah,
decisions.
yeah. See, that's
So
that's a
you have
technological aspect of it. Let's take the social aspect of it. Let's say last Lok Sabha
okay.
elections, we had about 90 crore voters, and suddenly we heard that Congress of a data network, BJP has a data network which is spanning across the country, and they are doing analytics based on voting patterns so far, based on caste, community, religion, region, everything. So that is the first time when the general public came to know about this big data thing, and 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 some people say it is BJP's success is also due to that exact analysis or correct analysis of the situation. Congress lack of success is because there are certain parameters which, as you said, went haywire. So let's come to that example, which everybody can understand, which because it happened and we are all went through it. So uh, let's say a population analysis of voters how will it help a political party?
Okay, in fact, this is a prime example. India was a world leader in certain applications of big data analytics. So the very first example is what the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata party did in 2012 onwards in the run up to the 2014 elections. And this is a prime example of the use of big data, and it has gone into the case studies of all the top US business schools. Essentially, what it did is that they collected data about each voter in the country, um, based on public information or information which could be derived from the public, say from somebody's Facebook posts or YouTube videos. They can get a good picture of who that person is, what are his tastes, what are his predilections, and what are the factors that could be used to influence him. So, for instance, let us say from looking at somebody's social interactions, they have the Indian telecom operators have huge amounts of data about each individual, from knowing
Ravi,
whom he's calling, how he uses
you
his
got
phone,
stuck.
how often he
Ravi,
recharges, economic status,
Ravi,
his religion. You can get a name and
You got stuck
peaks
there.
are
You have
likely
to
to be.
repeat that.
Yeah. So I'll tell you
You
about
got
how the
stuck
BJP.
there. Please hear
Yeah.
me. You got
Yeah.
stuck. So
Yeah.
you need to repeat that point. Just concentrate on. Don't come to social media. I'll say that. Look, there is enough data in the voters list and the census documentation if you combine that itself, there is huge data,
Yes.
about people. And politicians are politicians. They have their network, who is who is doing what and what is. You don't need to look at Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, which is essentially in India is an urban phenomena even today. Urban in the sense that tier two, tier one, two, and maybe three cities. No, not in the villages. So let's forget that portion. But this data, the census data, the voters data, voters list data, how is it how it comes into this kind of analysis? How will it help a political party?
Okay, so what the BJP did in the run up to the 2014 elections is that from the electoral voter lists and their own ground intelligence and the census data, they could build a profile of each household, what their political tastes were likely to be, and how they could be influenced. For instance, one person may care about the economic policies of the BJP, but he may not care about its social aspects. Another person may only be concerned about the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya, and he may not bother about the social aspects of the BJP's campaign. Somebody else could be triggered by other aspects of the BJP's manifesto. Another person may be a negative vote against the Congress. Let us say he may be concerned about the corruption in the UPA too, and he's not may not be a BJP supporter per se, but because he's disgusted by the corruption in UPA too, is likely to be able to get to vote for BJP. So BJP was able to build a personalized profile of each voter in the country and to work out an individual strategy for each voter, that what they should emphasize. Should they emphasize the corruption and incompetence in UPA2 for individual A? For individual B, should they emphasize the Ram Mandir? For individual C, should they emphasize the defense policy? For individual D, should they emphasize the economic policy? So this is how they were able to have a very detailed psychological and economic and social profile of each potential voter, and they knew exactly what would work with each voter. They were able to predict that and act on that.
Yeah,
So this is
but
actually a
see,
classic example of one of the
Ravi,
uses of
one
big
second
data.
here. Let me ask you or intervene. Uh, how can you say it's one voter? I will rather say, having interacted with many of them, will say they were looking at a cluster of groups, because 90 crore voters is too humongous to water it down to just one voter. It will be a cluster of groups of people, like the urban, semi-urban, rural, certain religious groups, certain caste groups. So all these things, if you're talking about 90 crore people and their votes, voting, persuading them, getting down to that one person, I don't know.
No,
Is technology that developed so that one person can be worked on?
yes, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, if you look at this, is what a lot of advertisers and marketers are doing. Not just the political parties, but even the commercial advertisers have been doing this for the last about 3 years. That they are able to work out an individual strategy, marketing strategy for each individual. In fact, in 2014, the BJP was, as you said, finely grained. But now in the 2019 elections, it was it was a dedicated strategy for each individual voter. For instance, there are something like about 4,000 parameters that they used to rank each individual. And in fact, some of the telemarketing companies, the advertising companies rank you on as much, each individual on as much as 17 or 18,000 parameters. The world leader in this is, I would say, TikTok. The success of TikTok is because of its machine learning algorithms and deep learning algorithms. And TikTok often knows the teenager knows about herself, or the teenager's parents and siblings know about her, or the teenager's friends know about her. Because just by seeing how the teenage what previous videos a teenager has looked at on TikTok, they can very quickly uh, predict what kind of person she is, and they throw up more videos to show her those. Then it's used for very targeted advertising, and there are a lot of anecdotal evidences that certain of these social media companies, by analyzing dance actually predict that a girl was pregnant even before she knew it herself, and then they knew that they would have to start bombarding her with advertisements for diapers and baby food a few months later.
Okay,
So
okay.
this
So you are almost, you are saying, Ravi,
which
Ravi, Ravi, you are saying that
yes.
the social media, like TikTok or even Facebook and others, are a tool for the big data, analytics to get to you as a person. Are you saying that?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, you're voluntarily, every time you post something on social media like Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, you are feeding in to these big data companies. As it is long said, if somebody on the internet is providing you a free service, you are the product. Therefore,
Yeah,
Facebook, YouTube, they're giving you free services because in exchange for your data that you're providing them, and
yeah,
then they use that data for targeted advertising, because advertising is very, very expensive. And in fact, even in the 50s, in the days of when there was only print advertising, one of the famous advertising gurus had said, 50% of my advertising budget is wasted, but the problem is that I don't know which 50% of my advertising budget is wasted. So if advertising companies can save their advertising costs by delivering to you only ads which they know will work on you, very big saving for them. The reason all these organizations social working, they're doing it in exchange for your data. So the
yeah.
biggest data repositories in the world are Google and YouTube, or Twitter, or Facebook.
Yes. So, Ravi, my last question on this is that the whole purpose of social media is almost working as a tentacle of the big data companies to watch you, indirectly, to analyze you and come to certain, you know, or generate enormous amount of data on people so that people, this data can be used by the big data companies to come to for various purposes, whether it is politics or marketing or other issues. Is it not?
Oh yes, absolutely. There has long been a saying on the internet that if someone is offering you a free service or a free product, such as free email or a free social media platform, then you are the product, because what they are want from you in exchange for providing you a free social media platform, the free videos such as YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, is that they are collecting a huge amounts of data about you, which they are then selling to advertisers who target you with very specific, narrow, targeted ads customized to you, which have a strong chance of success. In fact, way back in the 50s, during the era of print advertising, one of the famous advertising gurus had said, 50% of my advertising budget is wasted But the problem is that I don't know which 50% of my advertising budget is wasted. And nowadays, online advertising and television advertising and is extremely expensive. So if the advertising agencies can send you an ad which they know you will click on and you're likely to purchase that product and service, then it greatly saves their advertising costs. And
Okay.
that is their incentive is to dramatically reduce their advertising costs by 95%, because they will only send you ads about products and services which they know you're likely to purchase.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they
yeah.
will
That comes to. You explained it very well. That comes to another question: is there any social use for such an analytics? Because let's say a country like India or any developing country, we have a lot of other issues of sensitization. Let's say there is a rape in the countryside in UP. There is an issue of sensitizing men about their sexuality. All these things. Can this be of any help in that space?
Well, certainly big data can be used for good purposes, it can be used for evil purposes or for neutral purposes. So far, the major uses of big data have been in the corporate sector. There is an entire branch of economics which has sprung up, which is called surveillance capitalism, where the social media organizations, the Facebooks, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Instagrams, the Twitters, are analyzing you all the time to obtain data about your tastes, so that they can use that
Yeah, yeah.
to build
No.
targeting
Ravi,
advertising
again,
about
you're
you,
going back on it.
and they
You
build
explained it.
a.
You explained that portion of it. Let's come to the other portion, which is which is the social aspect.
It has been used at 19, but it can certainly be used for extremely good purposes. In fact, another use of big data that the Indian government has been using very successfully for some time is to detect money laundering and transferring of funds abroad, especially if you looked at the Panama Papers. The Panama Papers were so complex that it would have taken human beings several thousand years to go through them. Used a lot of big data, machine learning, analytics, and Indian transaction.
Yeah, Ravi, there is an issue here. Okay, gone. Yeah, come. Yeah, let's wind it up. There too many this thing. So you mean to say, other than
Yeah.
marketing, there is a social, use of this, which can be done, if so needed.
Oh, certainly, it can be used for, let us say, predictive health. For instance, they can say that certain people in a certain area or a certain family are in danger of certain infectious diseases or other diseases. Let us say there are areas where there is arsenic in groundwater or the groundwater has been contaminated. They can
Okay.
use the agricultural, the irrigation data to know about the problems of groundwater, to sensitize the people in that area that they are at potential health risks
Okay.
from contamination of the groundwater.
Okay.
They can inform. There is a lot of good work going on in genetics in India using big data. And the big success so in the last 2 years has been by the government of India uh, in identifying money laundering, suspicious financial transactions, and especially suspicious transactions in the stock and share market.
Okay.
So
Okay. Okay.
certainly it
Okay.
depends on what are the aims to which.
Yeah, yeah. Ravi. Let's conclude here. So it is not just marketing companies or political parties. It can be used by the governments. It can be used by the social sector for the benefit of the people, especially critical sectors like the health. When there is a pandemic, there are a lot of predictions came, a lot of these things came. It all must be work of the big data, which we are investing. And let's conclude here. And thank you for this. And we will continue our discussion in the next episode. Thank you, Ravi.